Plum Island, Newbury.
Jeff Shaw, project architect from Context Architecture.
Eric Spahn, Vice Chair, 14 Old Farm Way.
Kevin Heffernan, OPM, Vertex. Mike Riley, Police Chief.
Thank you. So, as always, electronically you are all sent, if you're on our email list, the anticipated handouts that we're going to be giving out today. I have a couple extra copies if someone wants to follow along, you want to pass them around. The agenda items we're going to go over. There'll be a period for comments. All I would ask is that if you address the agenda items that we talked about, we're more prepared to respond to that. If it's a new topic you want to bring up, I would suggest just submit it as a communication via email. Then it automatically goes on the agenda for the next meeting. So simple rules of the road, and why don't we get going? Here are, we all got these electronically. All right, so item number 3, a review of minutes for the January 25th meeting. I didn't receive any comments, corrections, or concerns. So this will be, can we entertain a motion there, Mr. Vice Chairman?
Sure. I'll entertain a motion to accept the meeting minutes.
I'll second that.
Right.
All right, any discussion? All in favor? All right. Okay, item number 4. Jeff, why don't you start?
Okay, so we have a new revised floor plan. I passed out copies to everyone on the table. There are extra copies up here. It starts, actually, I should say package, because it starts with the site plan. The site plan, it's gone back and forth a bunch, I think via email, as we've updated and defined things for a number of different topics. One was to take test bits, which was done last week, and another one was to do borings, site borings, which would be drilled today, so we can understand the depth to some reasonable structural material. When they did the test borings, as I'm sure many of you know, there was a lot of fill material in that site. They didn't actually get through it. They went down about 6-7 feet, didn't actually get through it. So at this point, the civil engineer is trying to determine whether they're going to wait for the borings or they have to go back out and do more test bits to figure out what they would do for infiltration. But when we get the results of the borings today, that will help. We also need to understand the nature of how far down we have to go before we understand what the foundation system will be for the building, because it can't bear on that fill material. So the current site plan has flipped the building from the previous orientation, so the parking is to the west of the building, and the goal is to snug the parking up as close as we can to the building, still giving it some proper landscaping, but allowing there to be future work around the fire station to get some more parking in around the fire station property line. I think for the purposes of this project and going through site plan review, it would be challenging to start working on other pieces of property. So I think what we've decided to do at this point is propose the parking for the police station only, and if the town wants to do other manipulations there, that's fine, because it also gets into stormwater and calculations. And we start talking about the fire station site, it loops in the resource district and everything, which we don't want to get into. So we're going to stick with our site, and this is just the concept plan at this point. We'll have to have discussions about curbing and what happens with that, and are we doing it and all that sort of thing. We also have to get into the grading of the site, which there is some grade change here. It's not really shown on the site plan, but from the front of the building to the back of the building, there might be a 2-foot drop in grade, which of course our building is not in plan set up to accommodate, so the site will have to accommodate that grade change so that we can have all of our entrances in correct elevations. But that's the basics for the site plan. And we'll obviously report back more as we know it. We are setting the building back to the main sort of entry vestibule area, 30 feet, and 30 feet from the neighbors. That's the two sort of definition points from the property line. So we are a little further away from the neighbors than we have to be, but that's to give us some buffer. And then on the site floor plans, the next 2 pages, we have incorporated the flip of the building, so it matches the site plan. We have updated and tweaked the plans, and we have included the breakdown of furnishings that the police chief went through and identified from the existing station that they are planning to move over. So any place you see furnishings that are on the plan, most of them are from the existing building. There are some that are not. The large conference table is not, and I believe the interview room on the first floor is not. And the dispatch, obviously, equipment is not. But everything else, I think the admin assistant is also a new piece of furniture as well. So everything else would be sort of brought over. One of the other things that Mike mentioned, he has seen these plans a few days ago. He sent him a copy, and one of the other things you had mentioned, Mike, is on the first floor, you were hoping to be able to get people through into and out of the interview room without having to go into the secure part of the building.
Right.
And I mentioned via email, but I mentioned to him that the reason it sort of works the way it does is we need an egress component, a stair from the second floor to the first floor, and that stair has to be fully enclosed. And currently, the way that stair works is you come down into the vestibule and you go right outside, which is really the way the code likes it to be. I mean, technically, we could get rid of the wall between the stair and the corridor and essentially turn it into a bigger vestibule, but we would then have to add doors from that vestibule to the other parts of the building, which means you start, as you see walking down the corridor, you start getting the problems with the position of other doors. So putting a door in the middle of the corridor, I can't really find a great place to do it that would still allow the other rooms to work correctly, but then give you that separation that we need by code.
I think as long as the doors upstairs to the vestibule are passkey and there's security, then I have no issue with the design. All I worry about is we're going to be releasing prisoners out of this interview room. I'd like a door into the vestibule so we can have people come in, just go right into the interview room, but have no other access into the interior of the police station. As long as it's passkey to get through the doors from the vestibule. So if someone came in that side door and went upstairs, they wouldn't have access to the upstairs of the police station. They'd need a passkey. So as long as we have security there, the design is fine.
Okay. And again, I think too, maintaining the smallest vestibule you can, it acts as an airlock too.
Mm-hmm.
The bigger it is, the more you'll have to heat and all that. But I think we're at that point. We were joking about it earlier, where that we as non-architects have to listen to the architects.
Yep.
I know, Eric, you're shocked to hear that.
You say that again.
But as a contractor, I think we're at that critical time where that, I'm impressed with this. I think this is both innovative and the most efficient use of space.
There's no wasted space.
No,
It flows
this, I
very
mean,
nicely,
we've
too.
gone from 11,500, which would be the traditional police layout in workspace allocation, to 9,400.
Yeah.
This is, I think we're at the baseline. And any other comments, Mike, that you?
No, I think Eric's done a fantastic job.
Yeah.
He's brought everything as far as the flow of the police station and what I was looking for and what we were looking for. He incorporated it as best he could in this design, and, you know, I think it's good.
Eric, how about yourself? You get a full voice here, being a registered professional.
Yeah, I think it's a great plan, fitting everything in. I do have one little comment.
Go ahead.
So, if the building is located as such and the grade moves up and you're entering the front of the building, it's always something where you're parking on the side and then having to walk all the way
Yeah,
around to the
right.
front.
Yep.
And in thinking this through, where you had previously had the stair in the corner, and we were talking about what activates the front facade to make it, you know, a building. And the only wrinkle I would say is if there was something on the corner, so as you drive down the street, you know, if there was some little element, and how that could affect the plan where you could actually enter from the parking off the side without having to do this huge, a circuitous route
Yeah.
to just get to a front door that really is
I-
a side door.
I agree with you, and that's actually something I spent some time, first half of this last few weeks, trying to figure out how to do that. We actually had the stairs flipped on both sides of the building for a while with the elevator over there, trying to make it work, and what keeps tripping us up is the second floor, so I don't think it can be a two-story element.
Nope.
You know, when moving the stair and the elevator, I think they're kind of fixed where they are. And then I did flip the vestibule around, I just couldn't find a way to nicely find the cone for the toilet in the conference room
So
that
could
didn't
com-
make it stick off the
How
front
about
of the
just
building.
flipping the vestibule in the conference?
Yeah, that's the
room?
only other option, is that we
And
ultimately.
then if there's some, you enter, there's some,
Larger element.
or just a little, I'm gonna call it a porch for the moment, but there's something you enter under.
Entry canopy.
Right, and then it would be welcoming, it would be something that identifies the corner, if that works.
Yeah,
It's not adding any more square footage.
we can do that. And that helps to orient you from your car and from the approach drive, so that you can see the entrance a little bit more prominently. So, I think the very next step, and I was actually hoping to be able to do it for today, it didn't happen, is to start showing you three-dimensional views of the building, so that you see what this box looks like. That's one of the reasons the stair kind of popped out at the back end. One was to make the stair work better, but the other one was because of the plain box looking like, you know, view of the building, it really wasn't much to look at. And I felt like we'd be disappointed when we started looking at it in 3 dimensions. So that's gonna help break it up a little bit, because the back side of that building with the garages and locker rooms isn't gonna have the same type of windows as the front 2/3 of the building will have. So the next time you see this, we'll be looking at 3-dimensional.
One quick question, Jeff. To access the third floor storage area, is that stairway one?
That's right,
Okay.
yeah,
And that's rated all the way up
that's
to
right.
that. I think, at this point, I think it would be worthy, unless we get some other schematic issues here. I mean, I think from workspace allocation, we're right at it. I mean, I think we should move to accept this, subject to this this minor, giving Jeff the flexibility to interchange the conference for the vestibule. But I think authorizing you that we're going to accept the BSD schematic design as presented.
Okay, great.
Okay, and move this along, because you want to get into, we'd like to obviously get an updated cost estimate upon,
So, yeah, the next step for us, actually, I actually initially had it for today's meeting, but it's not gonna be today, it's gonna be the 22nd. But I wanna go through HVAC systems
okay.
and talk about options. I don't know if my engineer's gonna be able to come to the meeting, the timing, but I'll at least be able to give you the overview of them, and we'll get it out ahead of time as well before the meeting. But we'll have a system comparison between a minimum of 3 HVAC systems with total life cycle cost.
We have natural gas on the street, as I recall.
Yes.
And Jeff, you'll have the information you requested, talk to the administrative assistant, you'll have it early next week.
Okay,
So,
very good. Thank you. And so we will also be getting narratives from the structural engineer. I've already talked to him, and civil, so that we can, after the next meeting, which is the 22nd, we can then start our cost estimating. So you can have a more complete picture.
Is landscape just an allowance then still?
The civil engineer is going to throw something in for landscape. I don't think that we're going to have a very big budget for landscaping there, I guess. Maybe some seeding. We should talk about an irrigation system, whether that is going to be part of it, because there's probably going to be a lot more lawn here than I might have in another building, but that's another cost.
Well, if we're going to do the landscaping, then we're gonna put in the necessary infrastructure to sustain it. So Mike may not get a new seat for his office, but the grass will be green.
On a nice day, I'll sit out in the green grass.
So why don't we actually vote just to accept the SDs?
Okay, I'll make a motion to.
Second discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, Kevin, how about your thoughts? Anything you want to add to?
No, I agree with Eric. I would like to, I like the idea of switching that. The conference in the vestibule, I think it does give easier access to anyone coming into the station. But other than that, this absolutely looks like there's no wasted space at all.
Yeah, I think we're there. I want to report too that I had shared this current layout with the neighborhood. Mike Doyle has been acting kind of a neighborhood liaison, and his feedback to me was that this was acceptable. The only comments that was made was they would prefer greenscape versus a fence on the residential side. So whether we're going to put some aprobates in there or whatever, that was the main feedback. But according to Mike, having the parking closer to the fire station was the preferred site layout.
And with this plan, with the furniture, FF&E Excel sheet,
Yep.
you can then take this and count off and mark off furniture, right? Is that what you were?
Jeff has already put
Yeah,
the
so,
furniture that I sent.
so the
from
good
him.
thing is it already includes all of the chief's furniture that he wants to move to the building. And I think there's only a couple of rooms that you don't have furnishings for.
Right, that will,
So that'll go into the budget.
Great. So
I expect that furnishing budget will be very low.
yeah.
I think too, if you have some workstation needs, we can address those.
Those are things I can go
I
before the
think we-
finance committee and ask for.
Well, I think we can get those
$1,000
donated
here.
from the local mill shop.
Yeah, so,
If
there are a lot of innovative ways we can do things.
Yeah.
So furniture will be a part. Are we missing anything else in the estimate?
In the budget, I don't know. It'll be all right. Most of it's gonna revolve around the engineer.
How's the estimate presented? Is it a CSI format? Is there a
CSI.
schedule of values up front and then there's an individual breakout?
That's right.
Eric, do you want to just go into quickly the MEP narratives, just so that we have clarity on what you would like to see on,
Well, I think, as Jeff said, it's not just here's the recommendation, it's
Right.
here's 3 options, and then we can, there'll be a little bit of backup of, I think there'll be a selected preferred system for this size building, and then we can reason why. Efficiency, cost up front, cost to maintain. I don't think I think in this size building, there's no 2-story spaces, there's no huge spaces, there's nothing there's no huge curtain wall kind of thing that may drive it a little differently. And I guess at this time, it would also be good to ask the MEP if there's any sustainability options that might be a little, not the very basic, but could have some payback or savings in the future.
Yeah, that's what we'll be doing. It's, we'll do the life cycle cost analysis, so
Okay.
you'll be able to compare first cost and overall system cost for a 30-year period.
And then with that, obviously, it's got to fit within the system, within the building or
Yeah.
on the site.
Right.
And there's pluses and minuses to how they get allocated.
Exactly.
I mean, typically you're using 12 or 13 foot slab.
Floor to floors, what did we say here? I thought we had it written on here. We used to. I think we're at 12'10". Yeah, we're a little bit higher than that, and that'd be at 13 feet, but, we would normally do 14 feet, but we're trying to make it.
No, because of its sparse footprint, you're trying to keep it from.
Yeah, which, you know, it is interesting in the sense that depending on which system you go with, you know, some of the more traditional cheap systems, like a VAV, actually take more room because the amount of air conditioning inside, the ductworks get bigger. But if you go with like a split system, any split, or refrigerant-based system, you're really just piping and there's small amount of ductwork, so it actually makes the floor to floor easier to accomplish.
Units in the room.
Well, I mean, the point is, if we have a 10-foot finished ceiling, we've got 3 feet of gross space for mechanicals, which
Yeah, and most of the
horizontal
ceilings.
gas furnaces with
be
a
nine.
coil. I mean, it would almost seem that a building this size, we're gonna need 4 zones, probably at a minimum, with some auxiliary heat in the vestibules. So that's a,
The other thing, just to mention, because I had the conversation, so you might as well hear it, is the structural engineer, if we are gonna put storage on the attic, is definite that that attic floor is gonna have to be, if the rest of the building is slab on deck, that attic floor is gonna be slab on deck, so we're not gonna be doing wood trusses. More than likely, it's probably gonna be a beam system up there, which increases the usefulness of the attic, but it's different from what we had previously talked about, because of the need to make sure it can handle the weight.
I think it's critical that we at least be able to use that potentially as file storage for certainly PD needs, but even overflow from the fire or police or town hall. Low cost extra space.
So is this steel composite deck?
Currently, that is the way that
They
we
like-
are treating.
They like gauge metal frame the roof?
Yeah, maybe. We haven't, I mean, we just started spitballing ideas the other
Yep.
day, but you know, the major structures, steel with concrete floors, light gauge metal backup for the exterior wall, except for the back, which will be block.
And there's some outline block.
That's right. Yeah. Which, even if it's a steel frame, it's more than likely that we're gonna, he hasn't told me yet, but I'm very confident that he's gonna tell me that he's gonna wanna put steel columns down through that block. So that block may not be low bearing.
You got a lot of
It's
buildings
just
together,
gonna back
so.
up. Yeah.
I mean, at first blush, it looks like we're gonna have some sort of a piling system with grade beams out in the.
Well, it's just a question of what's cheapest, you know, replacing it with structural fill and compacting it, bringing it up and just doing regular footings, or doing, you know, rock piles, or what, you know,
The budget will dictate.
it will,
Anything else, Jeff, on
no.
those items? Eric, you want to, any comments about Jeff's report, or anything you want to add to it?
No, I think that we've walked through the outline of what we're expecting for the estimate, that the consultants are going to be engaged and have some input on it. Furniture budget will be included. Is there any other budgeting information outside of what Jeff is producing that we, as a committee, need to produce?
Well, I'm still carrying a estimate of probable cost, which
Right.
I've adjusted accordingly as a baseline until we.
Are anything in those, are you using percentage values for any of that then get reflected on a whole?
It basically, you know, we're gonna get into that, it's gonna be the next, we're gonna go into that as
Okay.
item number 9, so,
Great.
and that's in our binder here. Kevin, any comments further on Jeff's report?
No, the only thing that we'll do continuously is add things into the draft budget. And update the best we can based on previous projects and other items that we know for cost.
Kevin, do you want to report, you had a conversation with TCS, which is the communication tower
Yep, so I had a conversation with Todd Williams the other day from TCS with regards to the tower. Unfortunately, he has the flu right now, so he couldn't make it today. So we're glad we kept him away. But right now, he does believe that constructing a new tower would be the right way to go, instead of taking the old tower off the existing police station and bringing it over. The cost driver of that was all labor, in order to dismantle and then reassemble again, whereas he can put one together, he strongly feels, for a cheaper cost. I was hoping today that he might be able to give that overall 35,000 foot level draft estimate, but he's not here. But as soon as I get that, he was indicating that the structure itself would cost around anywhere from $45,000 to $55,000–$60,000 just for the structure itself.
But what I want to keep in mind though is that I'd like to evaluate the existing tower.
Yes.
If there's any reason we have to replace it. If there's not, then we should do a cost comparison, running a duct bank to it and utilizing it based on its current site location, not conflicting with phase 2 or phase 3 of this whole municipal area.
And I know that one of his concerns was the ability to handle both PD and FD at the same time, so he's making sure that that's a scenario that can easily exist.
Does that happen now, Mike, both?
Yeah, well, one of the things when I had conversations with Todd about utilizing the existing tower,
Yeah.
said you lose signal strength the further that you cable the radio.
Yeah, my guess
For us.
is that if we stick with it in its current location, he's gonna advocate that a shelter, some sort of climate-controlled shelter, or maybe it gets stuck in the town hall, be constructed to house that radio equipment.
I don't know
right near the
anything about
tower,
radios.
and then send the signal.
I think, again, the budget is gonna dictate to us what's going to be the pathway forward.
If we're into, I mean, you're into it, you have a service contract with them now, which is ongoing and
Right.
it's standard procedure. If we're asking for service, having them outline, is this going to have to go out to bid in the future because of the price tag for the whole thing?
It is, it certainly will have to go out to bid, but it'll be procured directly by the town. It wouldn't be part of the GC package that's going out. Kevin, if possible, if you could invite Todd to come to our next meeting, which is going to be February 22nd. And if he has any information or a little narrative that he wants to submit beforehand, sometimes it's more productive to get a little
Yes.
information up
Yep.
front. Okay, Chief, anything else?
No.
All right, well, why don't we go to item 9? Estimate of probable cost. All I've done is this is really, it's been a takeoff from what Jeff originally initiated. Kevin had tweaked the lad a little bit, but we're still carrying primarily the original cost with some adjustments. Currently, right now, the projected cost is $6.889 million. So we're just under 6.9 million. I think the big thing is, we all know it, this is a public bid process, and I think the biggest thing that I want to emphasize with the Board of Selectmen and all the other committees and boards that have to assist in approvals is the time is of the essence. The 4% escalation that we're carrying is pretty much marginal. If we miss our plan completion and release a bid for late August, and we're not coming out of the ground in November after an award, that number can quickly go up to 10% or whatever the market condition is. But the cost has been adjusted to reflect the 9,400 square feet. Certainly, Jeff, I think that's your gross aggregate with,
Construction cost?
yeah.
Yeah, that was from the original 450, I believe, per square foot.
No, I'm talking about your line item.
Oh, yeah, yeah, no, that
Engineering.
is, yeah.
That's with the
yeah,
approved changes.
Correct.
And Kevin, that's your number right now with?
Yes, those are the numbers that we're going up
That
against.
we're
Yep.
working on,
That's to
okay.
maximize it.
So again, I think from a residence issue, this is still in the sausage making stage. This is just kind of some reference that we're using. Typically, it's a look back the last 6 months to a year for pricing. But every day's a new day when you're in the public bid process, so that's where we're at. There's some line items in here that are still top heavy. Furniture, we're carrying $140,000 for cell tower and cell tower design. And that could be, we'll have a little better idea at our next meeting, but we're trending in that direction. But we're at that point now that we're using this as our conservative number. Any other comments on? Okay, I want to thank both Jeff and Kevin. Your notes have been a great assistance in the timeliness of getting them in. Makes life a little easier packaging this stuff up so we can get it to the committee and certainly to the real bosses of this project, which are our stakeholders. So thank you for that. Okay, so we have a meeting. We've published a meeting notice for a joint meeting for next Tuesday night between this committee and the Board of Selectmen. And it's really just a status update of what we're going to, where we're at, how we got there, and I think it's more of getting the board up to speed. They certainly have been a recipient of all of the documents that have come out to date. The binder basically is all part of the original record. It's just been updated with the new schedule, and I had to tape that one in, unfortunately, for my copy. But it's in tab form where there's a lot of repetitive documents, but it gives you each generation of documents. But from a presentation standpoint, the first half a dozen tabs cover all the points that we want to make at the meeting. So we have a joint meeting. I'll start it off with this, Eric, but if you're going to be, if you can make it,
Yep.
please chime in on where we are architecturally and next steps on MEP and stuff like that.
Okay.
Okay, and I think we're first on the agenda. Looks like a busy night, so I think we get about a 14-minute window, so.
There's a public hearing that they want to
Yeah,
open
we'll
on
be able
time.
to make that. So with your permission, we're going to distribute that to the committee. We're having some extra copies made for the chairman of the board, chairman of the planning board,
Bless you.
chairman of conservation, one for Concom, for finance committee, and one for capital planning. This will be available by electronic email, but it's due to the size of the file, it's in 5 attachments right now, part 1 through 5, so.
Oh, no, nothing to do with
Okay.
this. I have a question for Jeff later on.
Okay, so, communications. I did receive one communication of interest. Jim Moran had sent a communication, and he was going back to looking at the potential for the training room or EOC being located off-site from the police headquarters, and he had provided a little spreadsheet showing different potential locations on that. You've all got that, I've circulated that. I think what would be helpful is that, I mean, one, we've made a determination that this is a critical component of the police station. Its proximity to dispatch technology and all the associated equipment that is required. Of all the things we do, I think the EOC is one of our most important things, being a coastal community. From my perspective, our original response holds true. and stands, but I think there's always confusion that this is a meeting room, because it kind of started out as a public meeting room, a training room, and then the emergency operations center. Certainly that was a good idea and a great use of space if it was feasible. Now it is simply totally a PD functioned area, and a secure area for training and or for emergency operations center. I'm not sure if you're all aware of the different standards that have to be met for, I'm gonna hand this stuff out. These are guidelines and checklists that certainly, if you want to go check the websites, it's your FEMA, MEMA, and Mass Police Accreditation Commission. Each one of these have some oversight with guidelines or recommendations. And the best example in talking to a counterpart, when you have a kitchen fire, it's easier when the fire extinguisher is in the kitchen than going to the garage to get it. It's just a time thing. So my view is that we've moved beyond this issue. It's part of the project. It's a critical component. And I think our original response stands. Eric, your comments?
No, that was my thought. It's just, the chief had put in some comments about its use before, and that you previously published a complete response. And I think there's other, I mean, the room now just has tables and chairs, but I thought we were talking about other necessary items or how this would get set up, or...
Because we're in the Seabrook nuclear evacuation zone, we have a bunch of nuclear preparedness materials and guides and equipment that we have to store on
So
site.
are there more little storage units or side tables?
So currently they're stored in the closet.
Yeah.
We can have a conversation about building millwork into the room, now that we know exactly what the furniture is, so we can see how much space is left over. It's probably just a question of budget at this point.
So you
I mean,
can flip that
shelves are-
hallway, you can move the hallway wall out to the edge of the millwork.
I could do that. I would prefer, actually, I would prefer to have a separate area for the EOC stuff, because I'm hoping that we can use that storage area for all the storage that we don't have in the rest of the
Right,
building.
I think if that EOC closet, we can line that with shelving that could fit the Seabrook equipment and guides and everything we need for that. And that door can be locked, so it can be secure. So we do have confidential information that has to be stored as well.
And we can get you wall standards with graduated 24, 18, 12-inch shelves wherever
Yeah.
you want them. And
So I think that closet would be fine. And our training room tables, if we had to clear the floor, they fold up and can roll out of the way off to the
Right.
side. So I don't need the closet to store those.
Yeah. I think the big thing too to note is originally when this was going to be a public meeting room, it was in the 1,000 square foot range. Now that it is function specific, it's in the 670 square foot range. And again, of all the things we're going to run into, this isn't the Wild West, but we can have some big storms and we can have some other natural disasters. So I think it's critical.
Some of the spaces that were listed by Jim are not owned by the town, so they're non-starters on the list.
Well, yeah, and I think the big thing for me is it was certainly a worthy exercise, because when you look at it in an isolated meeting room only, it's absolutely right, that we all meet different locations. But when you put it all together, and then the availability of technology, equipment, manuals, and what is dispatch going to do? You get an emergency call coming in and you're up in the EOC. The phone lines are down between here and point A and point B. It minimizes it, but.
And there's still a shortage of meeting space in town
Yeah.
where on some nights, there's meetings here, there's meetings in the corridor happening right on this level and elsewhere.
So that was the one email that had raised a question that I think it was good to address. Any other comments before we open this up to citizens' comments? Good.
No.
Jeff, you need anything else from us?
No.
You're good to go. Kevin, anything?
No,
All right.
but I'll get you that information for Todd.
Okay.
The only thing I don't know if you're gonna get to the schedule.
Yeah, you know what, why don't we do that? Before we do that, we'll go back and, thank you.
I do have copies of the schedule, in case people want extra copies of them here, but, the dates have been adjusted
Thank
to
you,
the first and
appreciate
third.
that.
The only thing that has not fallen on the first and third is it the 15th of March? I think it was one of those that wasn't a first and third. Actually, no, the 15th of March is the third, okay, so that's good. No, it was the 22nd, it was our next meeting, the 22nd is the 4th.
Yeah, I don't think that's a problem. It's the second meeting of the month was a conflict for John Keller.
Okay.
So, but thank you for upgrading that.
It did mean that ultimately everything moved up a week, so that,
Right.
you know, construction, everything, all of that just shifted up a week. But that, of course, will be subject to how the rest of the site plan review and
This was sent out to you. You got this. This is an updated schedule. We're now going to meet on the first and third Fridays. But as always, you're going to get your public notice and all that stuff before. All right, I think that's it. We're 7:15. Our goal is always 50 minutes to an hour, so any public comments? Anyone have any? Just identify yourself as always. And
Fred Lowe, Archer Street, Byfield. I'd certainly like to commend you and your team on doing a great job going forward with a standalone police station.
thank you.
The other thing, I've been on the, not on it now, but I was on the ELC team for maybe 12 years. It definitely needs to be in the police station. And then Chief Riley, have you had any conversation with Seabrook yet?
I meet with them actually, there's a work group meeting, which is next Tuesday night, but I will have Sergeant Ruthier attending that, and he will bring that conversation up
Great.
with them. So yes,
Thank you, Chief.
you're welcome.
Thank you. Fred?
Fred Davis, 59 Main Street. First of all, I want to commend this board for all the work they've done, all the emails we've gotten, you know, all the information we've been given, and, you know, especially Chief Riley, he's gone over this with a fine-tooth comb. Can't cut any more out of that. You know, he's really, and this, I think you hit the nail on the head. Let's put the training room to sleep. You know, that's a very, very important thing, you know. You cut it any smaller, you'll be calling it a broom closet. It's just, you know, he's really, really, really gone over everything here, and you know, I just wanted one thing about the tower. You said it would be more costly to take it down and put it back up, but isn't it gonna have to be taken down anyhow?
Well, I would think, I mean, that's a good question.
It's a budget for another project.
Well, but you know what I think, Fred, we're gonna have the gentleman from TCS here at our next meeting. It may just stay potentially as the fire tower for now, if they're already on it.
My only concern with reusing that tower would be, eventually you're gonna redo that building. So what happens to the tower if you leave it there and ductwork over to the new building? And that's all well and good until you do construction on the old town hall. Is it gonna stay there, or does it need to be removed anyway?
Right.
You know, those are just concerns.
So I think what'll happen, Fred, is it's gonna come down to, we'll get a little better clarity to cost when,
So it's more than just the cost of taking it down and rebuilding it.
where we're doing this where we're doing the police station as standalone, and then the fire station is probably gonna get some sort of work done, and then we're gonna have town hall. It becomes one of those things that making a decision in isolation for the police station could have a conflict for the next step 2 and step 3, let's say, so.
So, one more question. I was always get in trouble when I ask this question, but I'm gonna ask it anyhow, because I think it's on the agenda today. The total construction cost is $4,230,000. Is that correct?
That's the anticipated cost, Fred, using $450 a square foot.
My question is, what's on the exterior?
It's a good question.
Because that has a big cost variance.
Yeah, no, I think, but the 450 is a pretty robust. I mean, we're not at the, we were trying to carry a 390 a square foot. I think we've got some good options to be able to look at it. Jeff had mentioned earlier that we're gonna have A, B, C options on HVAC and probably exterior. roofing.
Yeah, I plan to have a couple of different alternatives in the cost estimate that we do, so that when we get it back, it's not just, oh, this is how much, cement siding costs. We can see what would it be if we had brick veneer on the building.
Sure.
We can get a sort of gradation of what are the various cost impacts of doing different levels of material.
I just think as far as, the town hall, the neighborhood, I really would like to see asphalt shingles and clapboard siding. If you could put that into maybe one of the,
That's definitely
One of
where,
the options.
that's where my head is right now anyways.
Yeah.
I think that was gonna be the sort of
I mean, the
default
asphalt
version.
shingles today are 30 to 50 years.
We're not gonna worry about it.
Okay, no, we're not.
I think we're gonna have
We are.
a good, better, best. The budget is obviously gonna drive all this, Fred. and
Yeah.
Those decisions are not gonna be made in a vacuum. They're gonna be driven by budget, being an open forum like
Yeah.
this. And ultimately, our presentation to the Board of Selectmen on Tuesday, where we're at,
Yeah,
is to get their approval
yeah.
of, this is all well and good from our committee level, but if the Board of Selectmen decide that this isn't what they envision, then we'll have to address that, so.
Having the options will also give you, everyone, the ability
Yeah.
to say if it's, let's just say it shakes or it's siding, that you can see the value in the comparison of the
Yeah.
budget difference, that helps you make a value choice of, do I want to spend the extra money or
Yeah,
don't I? And
yes.
then you understand what you get, instead of having just one and then
But
trying
to
to figure out
go
the
from
value.
11,300 square feet down to 9,400 square feet and make it work because of the architects, because of you, because of the chief, all we've ever wanted is a well-constructed, conservative police station. So looks like we're moving forward here.
One suggestion I would make, you all get phones, you all get a camera in your phone. You drive by a police station, you like the looks of it, snap a picture and send it over.
I don't think you're gonna be able to change anything as far as, I like the looks of the one in Rowley, do not like the looks of the one in Salisbury.
But you know what happens with these particular components of a picture? It could be the vestibule. It could be the Muntin design of the windows in the police. There's always some little component. I mean, I'll throw my 2 cents in on the exterior. I like the bank right around the corner.
Yeah.
As
that's what I was
far
thinking.
as the
We
core
blend it right
roof
in.
line and all that. I mean, that, and even the configuration of the columns on the deck, it's the Newbury bank right around the corner there. That's some interesting components.
I always go back to 20 years ago when they built the library. If they had it to do over again, I'm sure they would have done it a lot differently, as far as the exterior and interior, so. We only got one shot at this. And we can't like say, we've got to use nails or something like that. We've got to,
I mean, I think to just reiterate, it's a credit to the committee here and everyone that's participated.
Yeah.
Our first meeting was December 15th. We've approved schematic designs the
Yeah.
first week of February.
yeah.
So we're moving along at light speed here, which is, time is of the essence, and I think
it's all good stuff. All right, thanks.
Anybody else? Tony? Jim, we talked about your communication, and you were outvoted. The entire population here thinks we need the EOC in the police station.
Okay, I appreciate that, but I continue to disagree. Question, what would, if you just broke out the EOC,
Jim, if you're gonna talk, come on up, buddy, and
Jim Moran, 104 Elm Street, Byfield. What would be the breakdown? If you just had an EOC, how big an area would you need? How many people and computers would you need?
well, what I would say, Jim, is, here is one of the things, because we've already covered this. Why don't you do this if you would? The basis that I use personally, and I think collectively, these are the three governing websites, FEMA, MEMA, and accreditation, that really give you the guidelines or standards you should be following. But take a look at that, and I think it'll be insightful, because that's where putting them in old buildings, putting them in remote buildings, they all have their pluses and minuses.
Yeah.
So I'd say if
The
you,
websites.
yeah, those are the
You're
links that,
following these guidelines to,
well, they're a good reference. It gives you this much information when you only need this much, but
I guess my single point, most important, is conference rooms and space that we have in town, we've got other areas for training. And I listed out the 4 rooms
yeah,
here.
no,
The ones I didn't point out particularly was schools. We have thousands and tens of thousands of square feet of available space for training.
yep. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
I'd like to recognize Selectman Jeff Walker.
And I would like to take and absolutely recognize the clarity and the expertise and the professionalism. The ability to have connectivity with the group is outstanding. And I've been at this a very long time, sometimes as chair of the Board of Selectmen, and it's hard to have this type of connectivity and this clarity, and it's outstanding. You're moving at light speed and you're getting a lot of people that support it. Great job.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right, so just making sure we're not leaving anything on the table. Next meeting date. So our next meeting date is February 22nd.
It's the BOS meeting on Tuesday, then our next meeting is.
Yeah, I stand corrected, yes. Our actual work group meeting will be. So, did Jeff, are you still here? Jeff, come on up for a second. I think one of the things,
Your mouth.
is you're gonna be the liaison to the Board of Selectmen. Slide your chair over here if you would.
Say it again?
Slide your chair right over, Jeff.
Hi, Mike.
So, Jeff, that's going to be the binder that has all the information that we're going to be presenting, or as part of the record.
See how thick that is, guys? Wow.
I think one of the things that we talked about earlier, but ongoing, is time being of the essence. I think one of the critical points that we want to make on Tuesday night is, how do we expedite local approval, local permitting? And my thought is simply, it's not an original thought, having joint meetings with the planning board, with conservation, so that we file one public notice for the 2-week period. Stakeholders only have to go to the one meeting in order to be able to hear the presentation. And then having the ability to, Concom may need to come before planning, before they can get the site plan. They can, continuing whatever they need to do to another meeting, but a special meeting, where that, if we need 2 weeks to provide a turnaround on new documentation, and it's a continuation of an existing meeting, we're going to need these, our fellow committees and boards to schedule meetings. If we miss the schedule, if you look at the schedule, Jeff, our schedule basically is,
Where is it, Bob?
it's right there. The critical path is, by the end of July, having all of our documents released for bid. But that requires approvals.
First set are in June, second set are in July right now.
Right. So any time that we can expedite that, gives us the ability to hit this target and certainly to go out to bid at the end of August. My concern is if we miss it, if we miss this window by even a couple of weeks, we're gonna go from going to bid, getting awarded and starting November 1 to 2020 and winter conditions. And that's gonna automatically add another 10% to this.
Somewhere in my tenure, and I forget what it was for, we discussed expediting permitting. And I forget where it went and what the outcomes were when we discussed expedited permitting. But with the pragmatism that you guys have, you could certainly synchronize a meeting with the planning board, a meeting with Concom, where the issues overlapped and it would illuminate, you know, for both boards, some of the critical points. And I think that would be strategic. If there's a meeting that you might schedule jointly where, you know, the topics were totally diffuse, that might not be productive. But certainly where there's overlap with site plan review for Concom and everything else, putting those meetings, you know, together would be great. I'll talk to Tracy or Martha or some, way back in my mind, I recollect this expedited permitting that we used to talk about. And I don't know why, and, you know, where it comes from in my mind, but I think all the boards, which are done for anyone, really, but you're working with $4.50 a square foot, which one catastrophe storm or whatever could change that. You want to move ahead as fast as possible. So I think everyone's, certainly the Board of Selectmen will be very surprised if the planning board and all the other, and we'll urge that.
I think that's really the next critical step forward is to consolidate that. The cooperation we have received from every other committee or board has just been outstanding. I mean, we've, Martha Taylor mapped out a checklist of items for the committee and the architect and the build team to follow. And certainly we'll have some preliminary technical meetings with both Concom and Planning Board, just to make sure when we do a submittal, we're hitting all the points that they typically like to see.
That should happen theoretically should happen in late April with a pre-application meeting with them.
I think the only other thing, Jeff, is we're doing borings today, weather permitting. I don't know what it's doing out there.
I think it's fine.
It's
Just
okay.
rules.
I'm giving the vendor a chance that if he's not there,
Yeah.
we haven't seen him, some wiggle room, but certainly that's going to, soil conditions will be probably the next big
Now, are these
hurdle.
borings for siting the building?
Foundation design
Burying.
mainly.
Right.
Burying,
Okay.
burying
And then trying to
design.
figure out how deep the
Whether it's
fill
gonna be this or that.
is there, yeah.
You know, what you guys have done, which I think really makes things work and flow, is, you know, Bob and Eric and others Jeff, have certainly filled the pipe with pre-information before it gets to that actual meeting. Which a lot of times, even when I was chair of the board and I found myself, if I didn't do my homework and get things ahead and have things really prepared, it slowed things down, and you guys are certainly preparing things.
Well, I mean, we're a work group, so like every work group, with this work we have to do before we get to the meeting, unlike a lot of committees, which we don't hold public hearings. You know, we have a work group meeting that's held in the public.
Yep.
So it's a little different standard, but in order to be efficient, it's what we need to do, but it's what we do in business every day, all of us, so. But we have a good team. I want to give the chief a lot of credit. He has spent an extraordinary amount of time drilling down on this and putting his best foot forward in the best interests of his department, while being sensitive that, you know, being innovative and efficient go together for the town of Newbury. And for one, I'm excited with where we're at on this. I think I like this layout.
That's a good point.
And it's just tweaking the rest of it. I think the last remaining issue we should clarify is our budget is for the lot where the police station is going. So you're going to see, as you see in this plan, you see a proposed building location, you see a proposed parking area, you see a proposed landscape area. All of our approvals, stormwater, site plan approval, will be site-specific to just this lot. So you're going to have this beautiful rows in the parking lot, but you're still gonna have the fire station next door. That has to be treated as a separate parking, grading, hot top, whatever you wanna do, has to be treated as a separate and distinct project with its own budget and its own approval. So that, just so you have a visual down the road, it's kinda like, why didn't you do that? That's the reason why. So without any other, Jim?
On your budget, have you reviewed that in this meeting so far?
Yeah, it's already been done, Jim.
Okay.
It went out to you, Jim,
I'll forward some comments to you.
yeah, the email you got last night has the updated estimate,
Yeah.
okay, and it, so-
My overall comments in the budget, I think you had multiple items in there, I think they're gonna be looked at, but I expect that that's what you're working on now.
Yep. Yeah, it's still in the sausage being made stage, so that we're carrying the line items based on what we know from the last 6 months to a year.
I'll follow up to you in some
Okay.
writing on that.
Thank you, Jim. Fred?
So is there, after the borings, is there still a possibility that could be changed lengthways? Hopefully not.
No, I mean, I think we're at a point now that
Good,
this is it.
good.
It's just going to be, I mean, that's my personal,
I mean, the borings don't change, which angle it's
There's not
at.
much we can do at this point. It's pretty much, we decided based upon the last meeting, I think we looked at different orientations and the parking was so convoluted with the lengthwise design that it was
I'm
gonna
just
be
saying the
more
borings
expensive.
wouldn't make a difference of which way you.
Not really. I think the reality is for that whole piece of land, it's mostly fill and, landfill. And so there's just gonna be the difficulty of what.
Was that gonna happen today, the borings?
They were scheduled for today. Obviously, they were supposed to start at 8, so.
we'll find out, Tony, when we leave here.
On the finished grade, are you gonna raise that up to be close to with the
We
fire
haven't done
station?
grading yet.
Say again?
Have not done grading yet.
They're in the process, the civil engineer was out, Jim. We did some additional test holes so that he can look at soil conditions.
My
To
question
determine
to the
runoff
commission-
and-
Question to the committee is that your intent to bring the grade up close to with the fire station?
Don't know really. I think conceptually, we'd like some
The
consideration.
finished grade is gonna be wholly determined by the committee, telling the engineer what to do.
Well,
Well, that's my question. You
I
haven't made
think
that-
ultimately, Jim, what we're gonna do is wait for the engineer's recommendation, review that with Concom and planning board at a technical meeting. And, because at the end of the day, we have to be able to approve something and get it approved, get it permitted, so. That's kind of the process that, it's on the front burner, hasn't been determined. I think we all get our own visual conceptions of what it should be, but.
We do know it won't be any lower.
No, that's true, Tony. That's true. All right, any other business before we adjourn? Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, second, any discussion? Thank you, everybody.
What do you got? You got four, how many, you guys got two, like, you got more than just 90.
All right, so we can.
Thanks for all your hard work.
No, well, listen,